Good morning, Birdley. Um, Hello from a really miserable morning in Scotland. Um, if you were migrating over here today, I think you'd probably turn around and go home. Not a nice place to be. So, I'm going to cheer myself up, and probably depress you, with a reading from Operation Shylock, subtitled A Confession. And, oh god, I could go on for hours about my love of Roth, but I read this one when I was quite young, and it blew me away. It's Roth in microcosm, really. Identity issues, history, and genuine anger and rage. Meditations on the Jewish condition. You know all this, so I will shut up and just read. Right, Operation Sherlock. And I'll read the beginning. That's a useful place to start, isn't it? Okay. Chapter 1. Pippic appears. I learned about the other Philip Roth in January 1988, a few days after the New Year, when my cousin Apter telephoned me in New York to say that Israeli radio had reported that I was in Jerusalem, attending the trial of John Demjanjuk, the man alleged to be Ivan the Terrible of Treblinka. Apter told me that the Demjanjuk trial was being broadcast in its entirety, every day on radio and TV. According to his landlady, I had momentarily appeared on the TV screen the day before, identified by the commentator as one of the courtroom spectators, and then this very morning he had himself heard the corroborating news item on the radio. Apter was calling to check on my whereabouts, because he had understood from my last letter that I wasn't to be in Jerusalem until the end of the month, when I planned to interview the novelist Aaron Appelfeld. He told his landlady that if I were in Jerusalem, I would already have contacted him, which was indeed the case. During the 4 visits I had made while I was working with the Israeli sections, was working on the Israeli sections for the Counterlife, I'd routinely taken Apter to lunch a day or two after my arrival. This cousin Apter, twice removed from me on my mother's side, is an unborn adult. In 1988, a 54-year-old who had evolved into manhood without evolving, an under-life-size, dollish-looking man with the terrifyingly blank face of an aging juvenile actor. There is imprinted on Apter's face absolutely nothing of the mayhem of Jewish life in the 20th century, even though in 1943 his entire family had been consumed by the German mania for murdering Jews. He had been saved by a German officer who'd kidnapped him at the He had been had kidnapped him at the Polish transport site and sold him to a male brothel in Munich. This was a profitable sideline the officer had. Apter was 9. He remains chained to his childishness to this day. Someone who, still in late middle age, cries as easily as he blushes, and who can barely meet one's level gaze with his own chronically imploring eyes. Someone whose whole life lies in the hands of the past. For that reason, I didn't believe any of what he said when he said to me on the phone about another Philip Roth, who had showed up in Jerusalem without letting him know. His hunger is unappeasable for those who are not here. But 4 days later, I received a second call in New York about my presence in Jerusalem, this one from Aaron Appelfeld. Aaron had been a close friend since we'd met at a reception given for him by Israel's London attaché in the early 80s, while I was still spending most of each year in London. The American publication of his newly translated novel, The Immortal Bartfuss, was to be the occasion for the conversation I'd arranged to conduct with him for the New York Times book review. Aaron phoned to tell me that at the Jerusalem Cafe, where he went to write every day, he'd picked up the previous weekend's edition of the Jerusalem Post, and on the page-long listing of the coming week's cultural events, under Sunday, came a notice that he thought I should know about. Had he seen it a few days earlier, Aaron said, he would have attended the event as my silent emissary. Diasporism, the only solution to the Jewish problem. A lecture by Philip Roth. Discussion to follow. 6 p.m. Suite 511, King David Hotel. Refreshments provided. I spent all that evening wondering what to do about Aaron's confirmation of Apta's news. Finally, having convinced myself during a largely sleepless night that some fluky series of errors had resulted in a mix-up of identities that it was in my best interests to disregard. I got out of bed early the next morning, and before I had even washed my face, I telephoned Suite 511 of Jerusalem's King David Hotel. I asked the woman who answered, and who answered speaking American English, if a Mr. Roth was there. I heard her call out to someone, "Honey, it's for you." Then a man came on the line, and I asked if this was Philip Roth speaking. "It is," he replied. "And who is this, please?"